Welcome to UXL, where you can learn new skills anytime and anywhere. Visit uxl.com to explore our full course selection. This lesson is part of a larger course. Check the video description below for a link to the full course where you can enroll. If you enjoy our content, please like and subscribe. For your convenience, the course cover displayed on your screen provides the complete course title and lesson title. Let's proceed with the lesson. Lesson: Inflation Causes and Measurement. Inflation, a fundamental concept in macroeconomics, is a persistent increase in the general price level of goods and services in an economy over a period. Understanding inflation's causes and measurement is pivotal for grasping the overall economic performance and stability of a nation. This lesson delves into the intricate mechanisms that drive inflation and the sophisticated methodologies employed to measure it, drawing insights from authoritative sources and empirical evidence. Inflation primarily arises from two broad categories: demand-pull inflation and cost-push inflation. Demand-pull inflation occurs when the aggregate demand for goods and services exceeds aggregate supply. This imbalance drives up prices as consumers compete for limited goods. A classic example of demand-pull inflation was observed in the post-World War II period when pent-up consumer demand, coupled with substantial government spending on reconstruction, led to significant price increases. When the economy is operating near full capacity, any additional increase in demand tends to push prices up rather than increase output. Cost-push inflation, on the other hand, happens when the costs of production increase, leading firms to raise prices to maintain profit margins. This type of inflation can be driven by various factors such as rising wages, higher raw material costs, and supply chain disruptions. The oil crisis of the 1970s is a quintessential example where a drastic increase in oil prices led to widespread inflation across various sectors of the economy. The higher cost of fuel translated into increased transportation and production costs, which firms passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Another significant factor contributing to inflation is built-in inflation, often referred to as wage price inflation. This occurs when workers demand higher wages to keep up with rising living costs, and businesses, in turn, raise prices to cover the increased labor costs. This can create a vicious cycle where wages and prices continually push each other upwards. A historical instance of this phenomenon was the inflation spiral experienced in the United States during the late 1960s and early 1970s, exacerbated by strong labor unions and widespread cost-of-living adjustments. To measure inflation accurately, economists rely on various indices, the most widely known being the Consumer Price Index and the Producer Price Index. The CPI measures the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. It is calculated by collecting price data for a representative sample of items and weighting these prices according to their importance in the average consumer's expenditure. The CPI is a critical indicator as it directly reflects the cost of living and the purchasing power of consumers. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the CPI increased by 5.4% from July 2020 to July 2021, marking one of the highest annual increases in recent decades. The PPI, on the other hand, measures the average change over time in the selling prices received by domestic producers for their output. Unlike the CPI, which focuses on the consumer side, the PPI provides insights into the price changes at the wholesale level, capturing the inflationary pressures faced by producers. This index is crucial for understanding the upstream price changes that can eventually trickle down to consumers. For instance, a significant increase in the PPI for lumber and construction materials in 2021 indicated rising costs for home builders, which eventually contributed to higher housing prices. Both the CPI and PPI have their limitations. The CPI may not accurately capture the cost of living for all demographic groups, as it represents an average consumer. Additionally, substitution bias can occur when consumers change their purchasing habits in response to price changes, which the fixed basket of goods in the CPI may not fully reflect. The PPI, while useful for understanding producer costs, may not always predict consumer inflation accurately due to the varying pass-through rates of costs from producers to consumers. In addition to these indices, the gross domestic product deflator is another comprehensive measure of inflation. Unlike the CPI and PPI, which are based on fixed baskets of goods and services, the GDP deflator reflects the prices of all domestically produced goods and services in the economy. It is calculated by dividing nominal GDP by real GDP and multiplying by 100. The GDP deflator is particularly useful for measuring inflation in the context of the entire economy, as it accounts for changes in consumption patterns and the introduction of new goods and services. During periods of economic expansion, the GDP deflator often shows higher inflation due to increased demand and production costs, as seen in the economic boom of the late 1990s. Central banks and policymakers closely monitor inflation indicators to formulate monetary policies aimed at maintaining price stability. The primary tool used by central banks, such as the Federal Reserve, is the manipulation of interest rates. By raising interest rates, central banks can cool down an overheated economy, reducing borrowing and spending, and thereby lowering inflation. Conversely, lowering interest rates can stimulate economic activity by making borrowing cheaper, which can help combat deflation or very low inflation. The effectiveness of these policies was evident during the 1980s when the Federal Reserve, under Chairman Paul Volcker, raised interest rates to unprecedented levels to curb the rampant inflation of the 1970s. This policy successfully brought down inflation, but also led to a severe recession. However, inflation targeting is not without its challenges. Central banks must balance the goal of price stability with other economic objectives, such as full employment and economic growth. Moreover, external factors like global commodity prices, exchange rates, and geopolitical events can complicate inflation management. For instance, the global financial crisis of 2008 and the COVID-19 pandemic both posed significant challenges to maintaining stable inflation, requiring unconventional monetary policies such as quantitative easing. In conclusion, inflation is a multifaceted phenomenon influenced by demand pull, cost push, and built-in factors. Accurate measurement through indices like the CPI, PPI, and GDP deflator is crucial for understanding and managing inflation. Policymakers rely on these measurements to implement effective monetary policies aimed at maintaining economic stability. The intricate interplay between inflation causes and measurement underscores the complexity of macroeconomic management and the importance of ongoing research and data analysis in this field. This concludes the lesson. We trust you found this video informative and engaging. To enroll in the complete course, please use the link provided in the description below. At UExcel, we are committed to your learning journey. Each course offers a certificate of completion, online support, and downloadable resource files to enhance your experience. If you found our content valuable, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to supporting your continued pursuit of knowledge.